My guest today is Jody Kulas. Jody, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And Jody is another one that, what I'm calling a kindred spirit that I met through TikTok. Her content just came up on my feed because it's very much related to all the rest of the stuff on my algorithm. Um, and I've told the story multiple times already of how I put out an all call on TikTok for people who might think that they were a good fit for the show after I explained what the show was, and she was one of them. And Jody, I'm glad we finally got to connect because we've been talking about this for months. So again,
Yeah.
thank you for being here. And how do I introduce Jody? I will introduce her now as an Ascension mentor. You're also a nurse as well, right?
Yes.
Yes. And what I wanted was to do with this show was talk about how someone becomes, well, what is an Ascension mentor and how someone becomes an Ascension mentor? Like what kind of life has a person lived to where they find themselves in this role as an Ascension mentor? So, why don't we start with there? When we say Ascension mentor, what does that mean?
It just means that for me, I've been going through my ascension, my awakening and my ascension for the past 5 years. And I'm at a point now where my mission or my role is to shine a light for other people who are just waking up and may be like, what is going on?
Hmm.
You know, because it is very, if you've been, I was sound asleep. I know a lot of people have been somewhat awake all their lives and they've just been drawn to healing or, I was dead asleep until 5 years ago.
Hmm.
And it's been very disorienting. And sometimes it feels like when you get, rolled by a wave and you don't even know which way is up anymore. And I
Right.
didn't know anyone else that was going through it. So this is my way of helping other people who might be out there going, what in the hell is going on? I don't know what's happening to me. So
Yeah.
that's who I'm here to mentor.
Okay, well then let's talk about that a little bit because that word awakening and ascension, especially awake, gets thrown around. What does it mean to you to be awake? Awake to what? What are we waking up to?
The awakening is about understanding that there is more to this than we've been taught. We've been told certain things, and in my opinion and that of others, it is to keep us in line. Um, we're kind of put in this system and told what to think, what to eat, what to do, to buy, and just kind of be like a good little cog in the wheel.
Yes.
And the veils start to lift because the whole planet is going through an ascension right now. So the frequency on the planet is rising. And as
Hmm.
it gets high enough, some of us are coming online. It can't happen all at once. That would be mayhem, right?
Right.
So certain people are coming online and awakening to the fact that, oh, this isn't real. And what they've been telling us to do is not for the highest good. And I am not even aware of my full potential. All of these
Hmm.
things that
Hmm.
you start to kind of see through the matrix, if you want, whatever you want to call it.
It's hard not to say that. I mean, it's such an easy reference, and a lot of people understand that. It just makes it sound crazy when you do, but it's literally something has hijacked the human experience in order to feed feed something else. So yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's was my understanding too. But I'm always thinking there may be someone listening who somehow they came across this podcast and they need to have the foundation laid. It's going to be talking about things like awakening and ascension and you mentioned that you felt compelled and called to not only talk about it, but to mentor others in it. And that's why I just thought you were a perfect fit because I myself am one of those. I feel like I've been awakened to the idea that reality has been hijacked and not real. In terms of, like you say, we're not living up to what human beings have the potential to live up to and probably why we're supposed to exist in the first place. It's like everything about us that's great and good and that thing that light that shines in us has just been squelched and dimmed intentionally in order to serve something else's purpose. And you me, so many others, when especially when I get on TikTok, is people are just like, I've got to not only get on here and speak my own truth, but in the context of maybe it can help others and maybe just feed the collective, and that's what it sounds like you're doing as well.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. And I'm so glad that we met.
I am too. I'm excited to
Yeah.
be. So,
So then you went through your own awakening and was also felt compelled to mentor others as they go through it and kind of
mhm,
find themselves in, okay, what do I do now?
right.
All right.
Yeah. I just want to be there. I was just talking to someone. Are you familiar with Plato's allegory of the cave?
Yes. Yes.
So I said it feels like, and I was actually going to make a video about this. It feels like that, we all started out staring at the wall and the shadows,
Mhm.
thinking that's our only reality. And then a few of us now, some way before me have gotten up and they see the people casting the shadows. And I'm sure there's shock, and they've gone out of the cave. I feel like somehow, maybe we're standing at the door of the cave now. Like we know that you can leave the
Right.
cave. But some people are still staring at the wall, and some people are staring at the shadow casters and screaming
Yes.
at them and screaming at the people who are still staring at the wall.
Right.
So I feel like those are the people that I'm looking for, and I can't, we can't wake anyone up. They're starting to wake up. They're seeing that, these are just shadows, but we can't drag them out of the cave. So it's kind of like if they look up at us, we go, "Hey, hey, come this way," like
Right. Right.
that's where we're at. So yeah, it's just to be there for people who are starting to awaken, and then the ascending part is to, the awakening part is that first reality jolt, like, oh boy. And then so the ascension is when you start working through, your limiting beliefs and
Mhm.
all of the quote unquote issues that you've dealt with that manufactured these limiting beliefs. But when you start doing that work and you can start to walk out of the cave, then
Yeah.
what the ascension is. So
And I think that can be, and it just kind of came to me now as you said that, as you work on the layers and work going in. Ascension's a nice word, but it might even be misleading because it makes you feel like yes, you are rising above certain things, or but it's more like an expansion thing, or more like a peeling away of all the layers of garbage that's been laid on you since you were a baby, you know. And I even actually I watched one of your videos where you referred to that, how you wouldn't look at newborn babies and look at those babies and be like, oh, you're a jerk, you're a loser, you're this, you're that. I've always felt that in terms of how it's easy to not judge others is, everybody was a perfect newborn baby at one point. They all have had something laid on them to make them become who they are. And I know that when you get to be an adult, of course you're responsible for your actions, but you can at least understand that the human experience, that's just what happens. It's so I mean, who gets out of it scot-free without some crap thrown on them? So I think that helps to kind of understand, with the ascension and the peeling away, but also give you a sense of compassion and forgiveness for people to, yes, we were all perfect babies, born perfect, which goes against what religion would tell you, with some religions, that you're born blemished in original sin. And it's the exact opposite, which that's one of the things that's kind of hijacked the experience, are, organized religion and other institutions as well. So when we're say awakening, it's waking up from that. And then a lot of it is that the last guest I had, she was kind of doing what you're doing as well. She called herself an intuitive guide or whatever. But it's like the labels don't matter. You're here. That's why I like light worker. We're light workers working on ourselves and feeling compelled to speak up and help others. Um, Now I don't remember where I was going with this, but it's just that peeling away, that the forgiving and the guiding, and that's what's going on. So that's what we mean by ascension and awakening. And there's so many coaches and guides and mentors, call it what you want, that are just coming out of the woodwork, and they themselves have to be working on their own shadows and imposter syndromes and insecurities. And I'm sure you've gone through, well, who am I to do this? Or you know what I mean? She was the same thing. Who am I to be anybody's guide? But something's telling you, no, you need to be speaking. You need to be speaking up.
yeah.
Do you have you had a lot of experience? So you've worked with multiple people. How long have you been doing this again?
I've just been doing this for a year. I've just been
Uh-huh.
online. Um,
And
Go ahead.
so how have the interactions been with it specifically with that, the mentoring process?
It's been good. It's it's still very much a learning process for me as well.
Yeah.
So when I first got on YouTube, I didn't come onto TikTok until after, but I would get a lot of like harsh reactions, especially from religious people,
Uh-huh.
and that would trigger me. And then it was, the imposter syndrome and like I shouldn't even be
Yeah.
doing this. So
Yeah.
I so as I've been going along, I've learned that this is also for my healing still, always. And I've learned so much. I mean, I feel like just actually in the past like 2 weeks, things are
Mhm.
really clicking in for me where I'm really ready to fully step into the role and not be so afraid of what other people think of me and to not be afraid to say what I'm really trying to say.
Mhm.
Because because of those kind of backlashes, I would kind of hold myself in and, I don't want to, like, I don't want to deal with anyone, hating me or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's definitely been a learning process. And the people who do reach out are very grateful that they have found someone because they're like, I didn't know what was going on, and you hit the nail on the head that this is what I'm feeling, and thank you for making it so I could understand it. So
Yeah.
you know, it's worth it to overcome my fears of. I mean, I swear to you, like before, like 2 years ago, you probably won't even see a picture of me like that existed. If you
Uh-huh.
said I was going to be online doing this, I would have been
Yeah.
like, you're crazy.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was all about overcoming my fears and reaching out and encouraging other people to do the same. And I'll tell you, the thing that got me, I was really frozen. But I knew that this is what I was called to do. I've had spiritual teachers online. I had a soul coach and I took a soul coaching course. And it was, this is what you're called to do. And I'm like, and you're like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And my son asked me one time, he goes, Mom, can you come over here and help me plant tomatoes? Which sounds very benign, but I mean, and it is. But I was like, it clicked for me. I'm like, my son doesn't need an expert on every single kind of tomato that there is and the exact growing conditions and all of these things, which is what I thought I needed to be before I showed up for other people. He just
Hmm.
wanted someone who's done it before and could you just like walk him through it real quick.
Yes.
That just like made it click for me. I was like, all right, they're not looking for, some a guru or, a monk that's lived in on a mountain all his life. They just need to know what's going on and what's my next step. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I love that you said that it also that how much it served you to do it because
Mhm.
I was also just talking about that with the last guest too is what I'm finding is this podcast is for me. Um and that really let me I didn't intend that. I mean, I felt called to do it. I felt that there was a higher purpose to it, and I had to get past the imposter syndrome. Well, who are you to have a podcast? Who's going to listen? Who cares? You're just a guy. You paint houses. But once I did get past that, I realized what I get out of it and the things that I'm learning through it, just having the conversations. And I'm like, it doesn't. I've got maybe 51 followers, and it's not like they all listen to every show. And I've been able to let that go because it's like, it's really just for you. It's almost like this is a spiritual practice for me. And others will because they've called me or I've seen them on the street and said, hey, I listened to this or that. And it was like you were speaking right out of my mind, or this guest really resonated with me. So I do know that one or two people at least are hearing it and getting something out of it. And that's really enough. It really is. It doesn't matter if it could be, for all I know, my life's purpose was to just touch one or two people as I learned, myself and gone through it. But that's what I think, because I do think that the people who would listen to a show like this are probably also feeling this thing going on, awakening, ascension, and probably have a calling themselves that's in this same sphere. So to then hear someone like you talk about the process they went through to get to it and how they, like you say, you were I'm guessing what you're describing is very introverted, shy, quiet, not someone who's going to be getting on and trying to show anybody how to live in any way, yet here you are. For them to hear, because they're going to resonate with that, I think, the most. Because people, I think the people who feel called to do this, a lot of them are those soft-spoken, sensitive introverts. And it's time for us to come out of the shadows and not be hiding. I feel like, because I live in a very small community. I don't know if I talked to you about this in our past conversations. We have about 1,300 people in this little village. And I don't even live in the village. I'm on the outskirts of the village in the cornfields, and I've got two villages, about 1,200 people, 1,300 people. So you feel like, and this is a very Christian-based community here, you feel really like you're an outsider. But what I'm realizing now is because I'll have people come up to me, it's like, oh, well, people just don't feel comfortable being open about it. We're walking by each other all day long. You know, we're everywhere, but our nature is to be quiet about it. And that, it's like, who am I? Everybody's got that imposter syndrome. So I guess my long point is, so to just hear you and hear your story is going to be as serving to them as the direct mentorship, I guess.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, you want to go ahead and let's get into that. What kind of life leads someone, or at least you, into becoming an ascension mentor? So if you can just sum your whole life up in the next 40 minutes, it'd just be perfect.
Um, so I was from North Dakota, so I lived in a few small villages myself.
Mhm.
Um, and growing up was, we'll just hit the bullet points. I was going to call them high points, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
go that far. It was tumultuous and traumatic, and I honestly don't remember a lot of my childhood. And there were, I mean, one of the moments that is frozen in my mind is when my dad threatened to kill us because we had left. So that's just kind of, that was when I was in sixth grade.
So your mom and you and your siblings left that living situation?
Hmm. Yeah, my mom was, not treated well. So yeah, finally was able to leave. That was in sixth grade, and we moved into town. And he showed up and threatened to kill us. And I bring that up only because that happened. And for me, it's an example of that and other um, boundary violations that I thought that I had dealt with. You talk about them and you say, well, this happened to me, no big deal. Well, when I started to go like do healing, oh, they're there, you know. And
Mhm.
and of course that's a very impactful moment for a sixth grade girl. So um sorry, I'm getting notifications. I don't know. Is the video working okay?
It's kind of freezing up here and there, but your voice is not, and most people just listen anyway. They're not really watching, so I haven't been worrying about it. But the video it's glitchy and stop and go, but don't worry about it. Don't even think about it.
Okay. So yeah, so that was childhood. I felt like I never fit in. We moved a lot, and I always felt like very introverted, very ugly, very worthless, honestly. I think I told you before that some people say, "Oh, I never fit in. I was always in the woods, talking to fairies and, doing all of these like dreamy things." And I just didn't fit in because I just felt like I was worthless.
Because of all the things that happened and what you're calling boundary violations, which are probably pretty severe, is what
Yeah.
you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And now I say these things not as, so you can imagine people who were raised not being treated well themselves cannot always show up for you when you need it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of the comforting and the reassurance, that's missing. And then on top of that, there's traumas. So, you where am I going with this? But you get through that. I ended up, I was a mom when I was 17, and I had my second child when I was 20. So, and that kind of even made it more. So now I'm a 17-year-old introvert with a child. So when I'm, what, 22, I'm showing up at kindergarten, and
Uh-huh.
I'm immediately thinking everyone else I just always felt other people knew what they were doing and they had it going on. And I just had no clue what I was doing. And
You're describing exactly my mental state for years of my life.
really,
So yeah, I know what you mean. Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
everybody seemed so confident. Everybody else was so confident and knew what to do with their life, you know?
yeah. And if
But they
anyone
probably
watches
didn't.
this or listens, I want to tell you the people who are faking it until they make it, you have no idea. Like,
Yeah.
do
Right.
you do your thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Were you, I don't mean to interrupt, were you a single mother? Were you with the children's father? Did you at least have any kind of support during that period?
I did, yeah, when I was 20, I got married. Yeah.
Hmm.
First husband. Yep. So,
So you're a
yeah.
young mother. You've had a childhood that's tumultuous, abusive, um, sounds like full of fearful, to say the least, maybe, incidents, and now you're finding yourself raising children.
Yes. And so then I moved to Pennsylvania from North Dakota when I was in my early 20s.
Hmm.
Both of my brothers committed suicide after I moved here. Um, so that was more trauma. And where could we fast forward to?
Well,
Yeah.
you don't even have to. I don't mean to interrupt you there. It
No,
might.
that's
So
fine.
your brothers. So how close in age were you with your brothers? Because some people, I mean, suicide's that's big, that's heavy.
Yeah.
But siblings can be very close
Yeah.
or not very close. And what was your relationship like with your brothers growing up? How close in age were you?
Dale was, I believe, 4 years older than me, and
Hmm.
David was two. Dale
So
was,
you guys are pretty close in age.
yeah, yeah, and he lived back in Minneapolis, and I was near Pittsburgh at this time. Yeah. So yeah, I didn't know it was coming, or
No. And were you guys pretty close? Did you have close relationships growing up and, through your teens and into the 20s and while you lived together?
now I think, I mean, like I said, I don't remember a lot of my childhood, and it was not like bad, but I think
Uh-huh.
that type of situation. I mean, my relationship with him was not bad, but I think type of situation does not really, well, obviously in my experience, foster like these. Meh, I don't know. It didn't foster this like closeness in us. I get it could in some people, but it
Hmm.
didn't. We all kind of went our own ways, really.
So the situations in your childhood did not make you guys bond more tightly. It created a space between you, you think? It might have,
I
or
think it might have been like an every man for himself kind of thing. I
yeah,
don't.
that's kind of what I was going to get at. Yeah, yeah, you put it.
Yeah. So yeah, that was when I was in my early 20s, and that will come back for me later on. Um,
Uh-huh. And his name was Dale.
yeah,
He did it first, I guess.
yeah. And then
And
David was 9 months later.
only 9 months later.
Yeah.
So what kind of state of mind or emotional state are you in when the first time it happens? And then is that even something that can be described or that you want to describe to?
I mean, it's just shock.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was an interesting kind of contrast because I was very sad for Dale, and again, I'm recounting these I understand so much more about all of this now, but in the moment I was sad for Dale, and I got very angry at David because he knew, like, we had just been through this and you didn't,
Right. Yes.
so, and I had a lot of nightmares after that. kind of like he was coming back to punish me, and you have to watch me do it again. And that was hell. So
Yeah.
beyond the actual what happened, it was extra helly.
And
So
I thought that was something, I don't want to say interesting, but from the outside it is. You mentioned David. David was the second. You said that one brought up a lot of anger in you because he knew what it was like to go through it from the outside and be someone, and he knew what it done to the family. And you said he kind of prepared
yeah,
for his own, and you because you said that he lit a candle, right, or something,
yeah.
because of.
It was the way he like opened windows and lit a candle because the things that were remarkable about the first scene. It was almost like he was bringing them to mind, and here's how I will
Uh-huh.
lessen that. I don't know, but it
That just really, only reason I ask, and I don't know if I'm being tactful or not, I should even ask, but when you said that to me, because you said he knew that, when a person dies and things release, you have smells because bodily functions just release, and that I think you were saying is how, well, he had enough consideration for that, if that was consideration that you think, but not enough to not do it. Like he knew, almost like, is that did I have that right the way you're describing it? For whatever reason, that detail stood out and really made you angry.
yeah, and at that time that really did bring up anger in me. I thought, how could you, when it clearly you were bringing to mind what we have just been through and you're recreating it and just
Mhm.
making modifications. But now when I look back on it, it's, I think how profound and how deep was his pain and how sure was he that there was no way he could get out of it, you know, without,
And that
without.
well, that's what I was going to ask you too. Do you know what it was that made them feel this was the only choice? Like, so they had to have gone through the
Yeah,
ringer too. Do,
yeah,
do you know what was going on with them, or did you have enough close experience with them to know?
they were abused,
Mm-hmm.
and they were, and this was, I graduated high school in 89. So they were a few years older than me. So during that time period, what it was like, AIDS was, everything was about AIDS, and they were both gay. So if you think back to like when AIDS was all the talk of the,
Yeah,
talk of the town, I don't know how to say that, but
I know what
that's
you mean.
how,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes.
homosexuality was viewed,
And they didn't
was,
know understand it, and they I think they said it was a gay disease. It was
yeah,
relegated to them. It's because you're homosexual that only homosexuals can get AIDS. That
yeah,
period.
yeah, and yeah. So I think if you can go back in your mind to what it was like back then you'll understand like what it was like to be, or
Hmm.
to remember what it was like to be gay back then. It was not like it is now. So they had that extra, I don't want to say burden, but it's something else to
Yeah.
navigate in life. And if you're
Yes.
depressed and you've been molested and then shunned and all these things, then yeah, I don't blame them. I'm not angry with them. That I will say that kind of was the beginning of the end of my faith, my religious faith,
Hmm.
because I was raised Lutheran, kind of Catholic light, I call it,
Yeah, I've heard other people say the exact same thing.
Really?
Because I don't clearly understand it. When someone says Lutheran, I don't really know what it means, but I hear it described as Catholic light. So,
Yeah, right. We
okay.
don't have beads or
Yeah.
anything. Yeah. So, but then, so we were going through that, and then it was not only, well, they're sinners because they're gay. There's that whole thing. Well, now they've committed suicide, so they're definitely, according to these people, going to hell.
Hmm.
And I'm like, how can you tell me that these two sweet baby boys who have been through hell on earth and, through no fault of their own, have just been through it, and to get to the point where they feel like there's nothing else that they can do
Yeah.
except to check out? Like, how can you tell me that that God is going to look at them and go, get out of here. Like
Yeah.
that was kind of the beginning of. I wasn't like incredibly religious, but I had always viewed like God as kind of like this blanket over us and like kind of keeping us secure and safe. And
Yeah.
that blanket started to slip off. I'll say that.
Right.
Yeah. So it was a big
So
shift.
then that left you, if did you have an idea about God that wasn't in alignment with the Lutheran definition already, or you were fully in line with that definition of God up until that point?
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
then does that just leave you with, okay, if I can't accept that God would be this way, then where did that leave you in terms of a belief in God, how you defined God? Where are you at then?
Well, there was none. There was,
No God. Okay.
yeah.
That seems to be very common.
Yeah. And I think that's one of I talk about the biggest, lies that we're told. And I think one of the biggest is, this idea of separation and this idea that we need to go through a middleman, and we don't realize that and this sounds weird, I know, like when you're first, hearing it, but we're an extension of God. Where else would we have come from?
Yeah.
And we don't need a middleman, and you don't need to, beg anyone for your forgiveness. Like this is like, yeah. So I think that whole, that's the only way God is presented to us is like you go
Right.
to holy man or, in a church and you do what they say and you fill this envelope with cash every week and you say your prayers. Doesn't matter what you do outside of there, but that's how you, get to the kingdom of heaven. So you can
Right.
either do that and once the evidence is so contrary to that, then you're left with what? You don't have I didn't have an alternative. I didn't have anything else that was presented to me. So that was really part of my awakening or the moment in my awakening when I was doing a meditation and I physically felt my connection. And when I tell you I had no idea what was going on, I had no idea what was going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, how long was it between that you just spoke of, the experience and meditation and the connection, and the time in which you had the blanket pulled off and you're like, there's no God now? How long did you spend, I guess, wandering around with no belief?
In the abyss.
Yeah.
That was close to 20 years,
Yeah.
and that's a long
What
time.
what was life like for those 20 years? Happy?
No.
I'm
It,
guessing not.
it was so it was part of me just drifting around and being kind of oblivious.
Hmm.
Like I just really dove into the let's watch a football game, drink beer. I was like deep in, like
Yeah.
let's go shopping and let's distract ourselves and, all of these things. Still feeling like I didn't know what I was doing. I was just going along. I'd gotten remarried. Yeah. And um, I even said to my mom once, like, I miss believing in God.
Hmm.
I miss that. And I wish that someone had given me the alternative. And that's why that's one of the reasons I'm vocal now is like, God's not who they're telling you he is. He's not a man in the sky that's judging you. Like you're not cut off from the source and
Right.
can't lose that connection. So that's gotten me through a lot. Like if you can rest in that knowing that you're not cut off and the universe has your back and God has your back, source, whatever you feel comfortable calling it, call it. But yeah, if you can, and then that's when you can surrender. That's when magic happens, right? Sort of. Um, yeah, but if you can rest in that knowing, then that's when you can really start to work on yourself and not worry so much about external things. That's when you can really turn inward.
Yes. And I think the thing that drove that home to me, this idea that for me, that everything is an extension of God was, and I kind of turned to the Bible's um, words that in the beginning there was God. If in
Right.
the beginning there was God, and nothing outside of God, because God's the prime source. It's the source. What would it have to create from? I say it too. I have to stay away from
Right.
that pronoun he. What
Right.
could it create from other than its own energy, than itself? Because if it created from an energy outside of itself, then something was there in the beginning that wasn't God. And then you'd have to ask, well, what is that thing? Because that thing didn't need God to be created. So
Right.
I do believe that the source is the prime source, the beginning source, and therefore everything has to be God. Everything, I mean, it doesn't matter what it is, but especially us, because like you're saying, you said you missed believing in God. I think what's implanted in us, in our DNA, is this little beacon that you can get as lost as you want in the depths of hell, but it's always going to be there calling. And at some point, a soul has to turn its eyes and say, okay, I've got to
Yeah.
get back. I've got to get back to source. I think it's built into us that we can't be lost forever.
Right.
But yeah, so you felt that turning, that and that calling back. Is that what led you to find someone like Joe Dispenza, you think? Did you just start searching? Things came up. What came up that then kind of set you on a path towards something else? Does that make sense? Towards something like Joe Dispenza or this new idea of God.
It was just this I can't keep doing this. I was drinking like every day.
Hmm.
I can't keep doing this. I cannot keep doing this, and you would not you, I I would try, fail, try, fail, try, fail, and you're like, oh, and I think finally my guides and my higher self were like, you got to knock it off.
Yeah.
And I just remember I was like, I got to stop this. And I quit drinking and then purposefully, I was very aware of the fact that I needed to feed myself other things. I needed to feed my mind. I needed to feed my body well. I needed to move my body. I needed to take care of myself spiritually so that I didn't just fall back into that hole. And I had a journal and I referred to it, and I actually made some free journal pages that are on my website. Like, here's what I fed my mind today, and here's what I fed my body. And
Uh-huh.
I'm eating cleaner food, and I'm drinking, clean water, and I'm doing these things so you can, because that way it starts to feel better. You start to feel better as a person instead of just saying, I have to give something up.
Yeah.
So that's
And
what
that
helped.
I just think that gets overlooked a lot, is this caring for yourself spiritually. You've got to care for your body. A lot of this stuff's not real deep. It's you got to take care of your health, because if you're weighed down by feeling like crap,
Mhm.
because I went through my period of drinking pretty consistently, of just feeling heavy, feeling tired. That's what, is being referred to as low vibe. I mean, a lot of this stuff, it can sound woo woo to people, but low vibe is when you eat garbage food and like say a Thanksgiving dinner, is your vibration's so low you're ready to pass out and fall asleep. Well, we pretty much, if we're being unconscious, consume that garbage all the time. But since it's all the time, I say it all the time to people, like, you feel like crap and you don't even know it. If you
Yeah.
just step away from a while, you'd realize, oh, I guess I didn't feel good because I feel really good now.
Yep.
So I just feel like that kind of can be swept under the rug. Is It's really basic. You can have an awakening by just waking up to the fact of how important your physical health is, and that tends to snowball. And because I've seen it in a lot of people, my wife being one of them, is this a journey of healthy eating and cleansing her body, and then it leads to cleansing your mind and spirituality, a spirituality that's not confined in institutionalized religion or anything like that. It's just all tied. And I say that because you said it, and if anybody listening, it can be the start of it can be as simple as that.
Yeah.
Take care of your body.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's something, and I think we talked about this. It's kind of not off-putting, intimidating for people because you'll hear all these people going, I had this Kundalini awakening and I was, floating above the room and you're like, oh. And
yeah.
especially like I didn't want to come forward because I was like, I don't channel like beings or have all of these, out of body experiences or, you know, it can be just that normal and that
Yeah.
you just every day you wake up a little more and it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
this big to do.
That comes up a lot in discussions that I have with people. It's like what you find, and when you're really finding the truth of it is how um, nitty gritty and down to earth it really is. It's not Hollywood just makes you think there's this sparkling ray of light that comes down twinkle. I always think of Sword in the Stone, the old 60s cartoon when Arthur's the kid Arthur, the wart is what they call him. He's pulling the sword out of the stone and the ray of light comes down and the heavenly music plays. I was always waiting on something like that, and it's so everyday down to earth right in front of your face that it's just easy to look past it. But when you realize that it is there, you're like, oh, it's also easy to access once you see the small things that you just need to do. And and when I say access, I guess I mean access a truth and a feeling that does make you feel connected to God, does make you feel as though you are protected and supported and safe. And this narrative being pushed that everything's in chaos and you should be terrified, that's just a bunch of BS. And because it's just so easy to see through after you've done a few things that
Yeah.
so many people do. And what you're describing, you did.
Yeah. And that's it's so important to be, I know mindful is overused, but to be
Everything is anymore, though. You got to say something.
exactly. Um, to be aware of where you're putting your attention. I say that all the time, that your attention is your greatest asset and everyone is vying for it. That's what this is all about. They don't want a planet full of aware and empowered people.
Right.
Well, who will do their work for them?
Right.
Like, who will, they steal energy from or whatever they're doing,
Exactly.
like they don't want that. So they're going to use anything they can to get that rise out of you and to keep you distracted from who you truly are. And I just want people to realize that, like, you don't have to stand there staring at the puppeteers. You can walk out of the cave and just
Right.
live your life. Just leave the system.
Yes. And if anybody's not familiar with the allegory of the cave, it you could look that up, but it's as simple as someone else gave the example of a more modern example. You're watching a movie in a theater, and it's such an engrossing illusion. The screen, the big screen, the sound, which is and the enormous people up there, and the story is compelling, and there's music to make you feel the emotions. They've got you totally sucked in. It's a masterful illusion. But once you know how it's made, that the 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 images you see, which are just, well, it used to be on film, are just a bunch of random still pictures blinking by at a speed that your mind can't discern, that it's not one smooth scene of movement, but that the sound you're hearing is a completely separate track of audio that had to be lined up with the visual. So we think the people are talking, but you're hearing, it's an illusion that the mouths are moving with the sound. And then the fact that if you just turn around and look at the projector, that you see the source of where all the illusion's coming from, and then the illusion's just broken immediately. And that's pretty much what the allegory of the cave is. People are looking at an illusion on a wall, but if you just turn your head, you see the source of everything is up there. And in Plato's story, they're seeing shadows of the reality behind him, but it's just like being in a movie theater. Just turn around and look up at that bright light up top near the ceiling, and it's all illusion coming from that little bulb and the speakers behind the wall that you can't see because they've been blacked out. And once you do that, it's life is the same way. You can pull yourself out of that illusion, and what it can do is leave you like so many of us are. You're like, okay, now what? Now what do I do with it? I don't even know what reality is anymore and what I am. That always stuck with me. It's like it blows my mind that we go about life and like we don't even know why we're here or what we are. Because what it seems to me is that we're not necessary by any means. We're the one species that if we left the planet, it would flourish. Any other thing you pull out and things get wrecked. You can't get rid of bees and plants for sure. But everything would be fine if we were gone. So it's like, what in the hell is going on? And a lot of people feel that.
We're not doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Right.
This is not how this was supposed to be. So, yeah, you're right.
And a lot of people will refer to nature. They're like, well, even homosexuality. They're like, well, you don't see two male zebras pairing up or this or that. And they like to refer to nature a lot. I don't think that humans are supposed to be just in that in the circle of life in much the same way. We're more like stewards for the planet too. Yes, we belong. Well, maybe we don't belong here in the same way that other animals do, but we're here nonetheless, and we can live in harmony with it. But humans are being asked a little bit more. than to just fall in line with predator and prey and this or that. There's I don't know what it is exactly, but I do feel that we're not supposed to just be falling into the nature of things, but we're so far away from our own God source nature that it's reflected the planet and its situation is reflecting that back to us. The chaos we see out there is a reflection of the chaos that we're holding individually and then collectively in ourselves. The amount of mess you see there is the amount of mess we're seeing inside of us. And that's something that you come to too. And what you're left with is, like you say a lot in your videos, the work's to be done in here. And I think a lot, I can speak for myself anyway. I'm like, how's that going to help anything? What do you mean the work is to be done in here? So, what is that? If you were to explain that as a mentor, what is that work?
So
How does one get started?
to honestly meditate. You have to meditate and see what's going on in here that's keeping
Hmm.
you, because your mind is supposed to be a servant, not a leader, right? Like
Yes.
your heart's supposed to be leading the way, and your mind can, tell you, here's how we're going to accomplish that. But you're not supposed to be walking around, just following what your mind is that your ego are asking you to do. And so in your mind and your ego, you have triggers, you have patterns that have been like running in the background of your life and you don't even know it. That, you feel you're not good enough, so you never attempt certain things. You feel you're not worthy of love, as you are, so you seek love from other people or situations or accomplishments and, all of these things, possessions. So you're going to end up walking through life reacting to other things and believing that other people have to act a certain way and then you can be happy, and then you're
Hmm.
just always chasing that next, what's going to make me happy.
Yeah.
So if you can get in here and realize that you are truly connected to an endless source of unconditional love and you can tap into that and then you put that out in the world, that's your superpower. But you have to, like, doing the work is getting in there and going, okay, in this situation I was angry. What what am I believing? We have core wounds that make us believe certain things. So if you believe that you can control things, which we cannot, then you're going to become angry when something keeps you from controlling things. If you can look at a situation and say, okay, this is just how it is, and you can let go of that anger and you can stay more in the love, and we're not all like pinging around, like bouncing off each other and reacting. Like imagine, like picture 10 people in a room and they're all like, triggered and reacting to each other or the TV, or like just imagine what that feels like. Or if you have 10 people that are just observing and like chill, we've all around both kinds of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the work is to say, well, what's keeping me from staying in line and in center and in the love. And the more you, and it's not a one and done thing, it's, you know I've had some triggers come up like multiple times, and at first you feel like it's so real that you just want to give up. But the more you look at it and say, this isn't true, I'm worthy of love, this isn't true, and you show up for yourself in that way. Because a lot of people will say like, well, no one ever loved me. Okay.
Yeah.
I there's nothing that can be done about that except now you show up for yourself. So yeah, did I answer your question?
Well, yes, meditation, and there is not one person who's not said that. And when I say not one person, I'll just use myself an example. Anybody that I'm looking to, Joe Dispenza, you, every guest on the show. If I'm in a plant medicine ceremony, the server's talking about the importance of the integration in the meditation, a daily meditative practice. You can't get past it without meditation. If you're someone looking for some truth, it's in meditation. And I'll say this about meditation, if you're a beginner or you haven't started, you can't have an expectation that's Hollywood again. I have never in meditation heard a voice, saw a dreamlike scene that meant anything to me. I have seen images,
Hmm.
but that don't mean anything to me. I haven't gotten, because they say all the answers are within and the truth is within.
Yeah.
it seems, and I can only talk to the phase that I am in it. What it does do, first of all, is you will be aware that you do have an internal dialogue that just runs automatically. Your thoughts just run, and you're not the one thinking them. Your mind just, and maybe in a more natural world where we're not bombarded with amusement and stimulation like that, we would have naturally quieter minds, but we
Yeah.
don't. We live in this world, at least in America, and our minds have been programmed to always be running and worrying usually. But one thing I can um, attest to meditation is that you become aware that you are the observer of those thoughts. And that's a curious place to be in, because if I'm not my thoughts, because so many of us believe we are, because it feels like we're thinking those thoughts.
Yeah.
If I'm not my thoughts, then what am I? Okay, great. I get that I'm the observer of those thoughts, but what is the observer of a thought? If I'm not my mind, you kind of prove to yourself, I guess, you aren't your mind, and you can at least accept that you don't understand what you are. I guess my point is that can come pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And to be in a space of not knowing, I think is being in a space of wisdom. I think it's a wise position to realize you don't know, but it's also there's a mystery to it that if a person's in the right space, it's enough to keep you going. It's like, okay, I am such a mystery that I don't even know what I am. I've got to. I mean, you can't not be curious about that and keep going. And I do believe that meditation, as you practice, there will be other experiences, because I don't believe people are lying when they do say that
Right.
they have, I guess, downloads and knowings and things revealed to them. But
Hmm.
it also, I do believe, is true that the silence in meditation that you experience, it's cumulative. You build it up. It's like a muscle that you flex and work out. You get better at it, and then what you do is you bring that into your daily experience, and where you might have reacted emotionally and thoughtlessly and unconsciously, because you've been practicing meditation and knowing that you don't have to be your thoughts, and you don't have to attach yourself to the emotion that then comes from the thoughts. You then can live consciously, even if you only did it once in one day, but you'd never done it before.
Hmm.
That's progress, and you just get better at being conscious and not reacting unconsciously, like you say, with road rage, or at Walmart, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And it's again, it's this down to earth, nitty gritty, not Hollywood experience that you're like, oh, this experience is as close to me as my breath. It's just who I am.
Yeah.
And but yeah, you can't get around it. Meditation is the foundation in
Yeah.
any religion or belief system, or whatever. And
Yeah.
it's not easy. People
Yeah.
find it's not easy.
They're not going to come up and hand you like an invitation, and go, here's what I need you to do in order for you to, have to quiet your mind and allow them to speak, as it were,
Yeah.
Um, I think of it as like strengthening. So say there was like a guitar, what are they, wires?
Strings, we call them strings, yep.
Sorry.
They're wires though. I mean, you can call them wires. They're
Not
steel.
if you, I think of it as strengthening that and lining it up and feeling what that feels like. And then the minute like a thought comes along or a reaction and it starts like pulling on your string, like then you feel it and you're like, oh, I'm getting pulled off
Oh,
balance.
yeah.
And you can kind of dismiss the thought and you can let it go. And I always say, like, another thing people get very sensitive about is spiritual bypassing.
Which
Like,
is what?
like, well, it took me forever to figure out what they even meant, but there is an element of you can't just pretend everything's okay all the time
Hmm.
and that we are just living in heaven on earth.
So
That's,
the toxic positivity, I've heard it's that said that way too.
yeah, yeah.
Spiritual, yes.
So then I feel like sometimes, I think I just made a comment on a video one time. This guy was like, I hate myself. I can never forgive myself. I don't even know what he was talking about. I said, please stop, hating yourself. Like, you don't have to treat yourself like this. And they like got after me. This person was like, stop telling people not to feel their feelings. I'm like, I didn't. Like, but you don't have to tie a whole story to a feeling and then follow it over the cliff. You know,
Right.
like you can recognize. So for me, this feeling of being ugly and worthless has left me. I turned 54 today and I'm still working on it. Like I'm
Yeah.
still, you know, just in the past, 6 months, I've been able to just let the thought go instead of attaching a story to it and start to believe it, you know? So there is somewhere in between there. You know, I'm not taking a drink to pretend I'm not feeling that, and I'm not letting it surround me either.
Right.
So if you can notice when these things come up and you can just let it go and say, I know that that's not true, and I know that I'm worthy of love, then that's when you can start to heal, and you don't have to drown yourself in that.
Right.
So yeah, there's something in between spiritual bypassing and hating yourself. So
That conversation has come up with my wife recently too, because
yeah.
since we're both kind of on the path,
Hmm.
it's hard to not point out when the other one's off, and we're like, we can't constantly be worried that our emotional state is dragging you down. I can't have that added pressure. I have to feel the emotion I'm feeling. I'm sorry that it's making you feel it too, because we're so tied emotionally. We've been together, 20 years, but we're close to the point now where we're finishing each other's sentences, and when one of us is slightly off, it's hard to not, I don't know if the word's gaslighting or not, saying, "Oh, what's wrong? You look angry." I'm like, "Well, I wasn't until now, and now you're mentioning that." And it's just, it becomes a mess, and we've had to be like, we got to have some space to feel these things that are considered negative, and just, it's basically, I'm like, you just got to ignore me in a sense. Just, I have to let it pass through. Like in meditation, there's something I got from meditation. I love your example of the guitar string. I'm going to use that next time. But one that I've been using till now is like when you're meditating, it's kind of like you're the sky and the thoughts are clouds. You know, the thought can come in, but it's going to pass. You're not that cloud. You're the sky containing the cloud. Let it go. And I'm like, I've got to let these things move through me. Sorry that I'm not vibing high today. And oh my God, is it not difficult when you're raising three kids that are from 7 to 17? We've got hormones all over the place. And it's just like you can be the Zen master of the world until the kids get up, and then it's
Right.
forget it. I don't even try.
Yeah.
But even without trying, because like you said, practicing meditation, it just becomes your second nature.
Hmm.
So that's my religion, I guess you'd say now. Because religion to me is repetitive practice. Basically, that's how I define it. Meditation. It's the religion of meditation, and I guess I have a definition of God that allows me to understand how I could be connected. And it was that if God was that prime source, how could you not be connected? There's nothing else to create from but that source. Um, so yeah, it's meditation. Meditation's a big one. Um, because we're kind of approaching the hour, I had anything that you wanted to kind of say in terms of the grand general message to people, especially those who are looking for, say, a mentor. What's the message you would have for people in the world if you were able to sum it up? I know that's kind of a tough one. What would you leave people with?
I think if you could change your perspective, I'm so sorry. If you can change your perspective and understand that you are this powerful soul who is embodied at the moment, and you are not a small little human who has to beg other people to love them, please switch your perspective. Understand that you cannot lose your connection to God or source. I always correct myself because I remember that, religious trauma, or, how
Uh-huh.
triggering it was for me to hear
Yeah,
God.
it can.
What, here they go, and I truly like whatever you want to say it. It's the same. But remember that you cannot lose that connection. Your life is happening for you. It's not happening to you. Look at situations like, oh, I wonder why this is happening, for little things like from, I hit 10 stoplights on the way to work. That might have kept you from being somewhere where you didn't need to be.
Yeah.
Or, why am I feeling so angry right now? Like from minor inconveniences to life-changing inner work, look at everything around you, and you don't have to react and be triggered and run around angry and sad and lonely. It's such a comfort to know that everything is in here, and that you don't need anyone else to love you, and once you get to the point where you love yourself and you consistently show up for yourself and you treat yourself like you would someone that you externally love, then that's when your world starts to change. That's when you can kind of relax and know that you are held not only by the universe, but you'll show up too, you
Yeah.
know?
And I'm glad you said that because that's a couple things you said there that I'm glad that you brought up. One being that life's not happening to you, it's happening for you. When a
Right.
person can contemplate that and truly consider it, it's so empowering. Um, because so many things that are bad aren't anymore. It helps you release judgment on things. You're no longer a victim. And that yet we talked about earlier, you wouldn't go around judging little babies, you know. You were also we were all also. So look at ourselves as that little baby. Don't be judging yourself either. You know you've had crap laid on you too, and if you want to get past it, that's what meditation's for. Look at those reasons why you get triggered and bring that in. So beautiful message. Thank you for that. If people want to contact you, um, what's the best way for them to do it? Through email, to find you on TikTok,
I'm on TikTok. I have a website. It's thesoulunfolding.com. You can email me.
asoulunfolding.com. Okay.
Mhm. You can email me there. I'm on YouTube. Not
Mm-hmm.
so much on Facebook or Instagram. Never really
Okay.
caught on for me. But yeah, if anyone
Okay.
needs, if you need anything, I am truly here, in service to others. Like, this is
Thank
not,
you for doing that.
yeah.
It just that helps me keep going too, because there are times where I'm like, I've got so much to do. I just don't feel like an interview today. Already, it's only been a few months, but I'm like, every time I do it, I'm like, I'm so glad I did because I get re-energized, and to know that there are just others out there too that have 9 to 5 jobs or whatever your hours are. You have a job, you have to make a living, and you're doing this out of the passion and the love for it. And thank you so much for it, because I know it's serving the collective as well as yourself, and that's all we can do here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I will put all that information in the notes of the podcast and on YouTube. If anybody wants to contact Jody Kulas, I will put up her information at soulunfolding.com, and yeah, hopefully some more people reach out to you and get to know you. All right. Well, thank you for doing this, Jody, and I'm sure that I'll be in touch. Yes. All right. Have a good evening. All righty. See ya.